What you're looking at is the parcel, or a part of the parcel, that the 1st Aero Squadron Foundation has just acquired. There's 60 acres here, and a major portion of it lies within what was the operational field of the 1st Aero Squadron, the aerodrome, as it was called.
Bill, after several years of struggle and raising a little money to buy this property, what are we going to do with it? Why did we do it?
Well, you're right about the struggle. It took us several years to raise the $60,000 that we needed to buy just this first nut of 60 acres. The intent is to establish a memorial, a living memorial for the 11 airmen and 82 enlisted men who came out here with Minnie Floyd. And on top of that, we'd like to restore some sort of operations to the field, put it back in use as an airport. And again, as a part of those two things, a living museum, a hands-on interactive museum where people can come and enjoy and learn about that period of aviation and the period that immediately followed.
Is this truly the cradle of American air power?
You have to think that it is. This is the place where the first operation was launched over foreign territory by the United States Air Unit, which of course was 1st Aero Squadron at that time.
And they deployed here from Fort Sam Houston.
Right.
And they were one of the first mechanized units in the U.S. Army. And
yes.
Tell the story, will you?
Well, you could probably tell the story as well as I can. They were totally self-contained. They had the first ones to use four-wheel drive trucks. They built shops into the truck beds so that they could roll up to the airplane and repair it. They totally packaged this to go on the train, which came from Fort Sam Houston to Little Columbus, New Mexico, and offloaded. And by the time they were offloaded, the quartermaster had grabbed their trucks, their drivers, and away they went. They were the only unit that was truly prepared to fight this. 1916 was buried by the First World War. It was an important prelude to it from our standpoint, but once the war hit, nobody was concerned with what happened here.
Okay, well now, I've read some of the documents, and I know that what happened here had a great bearing on what happened in the skies of Europe over those trenches in World War I.
Oh, there's no question about that. It's what prepared us to be able to step into that fight in Europe. Had we not proven and disproven a lot of theories about fighting a war on this, what amounted to this proving ground here, we would not have been nearly as successful in Europe as we were.
So then we can agree that the guys that are still living that flew combat after World War I, because most of those guys are gone, but the guys that flew combat after World War I, and that's all of the little incursions and major wars in Korea and Vietnam, ought to pay a little bit back to remember the guys that started it for them.
Well, you have to think so. This was such an important part of the development of military aviation that it is just a crying shame if we let it slide into the dust of history.
You reckon someday somebody will donate to us one of those trucks with a shop in it?
I would hope so. I would love to get my hands on a Jenny, a JN2, JN3 Jenny to display and maybe even fly.
Bill, you got a lot of dreams there, pal.
Oh, a lot of dreams.
Why are two old Cessna pilots doing this? Can you tell me?
I'm not sure, Jim. I think you get bit by the aviation bug and the history bug, and then it's all over. You've lost it all.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
That's it.
This is too damned important to let it die. It's just too important. It needs to be done. It's where it all started for our military flying and a lot of our civil aviation.
Actually, that's very true, and you put your finger on it, because I would bet that there aren't a couple of hundred people in the world that could tell you who Benny Floyd was. Frankly, if we're not going to do it, who's going to do it?
How can people find out more? Do we have a website?
We do indeed. The website is firstaerosquadron.org.
And that'll tell them all they need to know. And if anybody wants to help us, and God knows we could use a little help.
Could we ever?
Well, we're going to get it done anyway. But if we can get some help, we can get it done quicker. We're about 4,000 feet or plus, a little better, right?
Yeah, we're about 4,100 feet here.
And we got a good west wind, so if we get a runway, it don't have to be too long, does it?
I hope not.
Thank you, Bill William. March of 1916. And off in the distance is Mexico. And straight south of Columbus is the little Mexican town of Palomas. And how far would you say that is, Bill?
It's probably about 2.5 miles from where we stand right now.
So what you're really saying is we're about 2.5 miles from the border with Mexico.
Absolutely.
It looks like we caught the yucca in bloom. It's beautiful.
It is. As you can see, most of what had been an open field at one time has been pretty well taken by mesquite and other brush.
Much of the village remains as it was in the old days. Earlier I talked about this being the cradle of American air power. And I talked about pilots that started here, passed the torch, or carried the torch into the future wars that had a lot to do with the freedom of our nation. Is it not true that Lieutenant Darg that flew out of here with then Captain Floyd lost his life rushing to assume command of the Air Forces based in Hawaii in mid-December 1941 in a blizzard out in California?
Yes, he, as I recall, he got a hold of a B-18.
A Bolo.
Yes, and flew it, put a crew together and flew it cross country in an attempt to get to Hawaii to take command, and flew into a mountainside, unfortunately, in California.
That's a story in itself, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
And he started right here, and he flew the first mission off of this piece of ground.
Indeed.
That's why it ought to be saved.